Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Blue Chip Prospect. Just like we did last week, where we took a look at the 2024 NHL Draft, today we are taking a look at the 2023 NHL Draft. And I'm going to try to make it a little bit more concise, a little bit more short, just so I can fit it within like 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes instead of 45, 50 minutes or something like that. So, yeah, let's get to it right away. So the first player off the board was Connor Bedard at number 1 by Chicago, and obviously it was the player to take, and it's still the player to take, and it will stay the player to take. 128 points in 150 games. Connor Bedard is just gonna get better. I know a lot of people are down on him because he didn't play well defensively, didn't have much of a progression offensively. But Chicago is a terrible team, and because of it, then it's affecting Connor Bedard. The more he's gonna be surrounded by a better player, the better he's going to get. That's just the normal way of things, and I think he's going to be a superstar in the league. I have absolutely no questions about it. So yeah, Connor Bedard number 1, and I think he's going to stay at number 1. And at number 2, it was Leo Carlsson by Anaheim, which was a little bit of a surprise at the time because most people thought it would be Adam Fantilli. But Leo Carlsson did pretty well, 74 points in 131 games, which is good production, but he didn't have the same role as Connor Bedard. Connor Bedard, basically, they gave him the key to the offense and say, do whatever you want. In Anaheim, they didn't exactly do this. They actually limited his ice time and limited the number of games that he played to. So less production, but bigger player, good skater, good defensively, good playmaker, good shooter, plays in the middle of the ice, does a little bit of everything. So I really like him. I think he's going to stay in the top 3, top 5, something like that. And at number 3, we have Adam Fantilli. And I think Adam Fantilli is another player that I really like. And I think he could be the second best player in this entire draft. I really like his intensity and I like his skating and his skills. He's not like the same, like, smart hockey sense type of player of guys like Leo Carlsson or Matvei Michkov or something like that. He's more direct and he's more like, I'm punching myself in. That's the way he is, and I like it. And I think he's going to be number 1 center in the NHL, and he might be the second best player in this entire draft. At number 4, it was Will Smith by San Jose. He had an amazing year in the NCAA following his draft year, and then I followed it up with a great year in the NHL, where the first half was a little bit complicated, but the second half was much better. I think he's going to be a great player, and he's the same player in the NHL that he was in the NCAA, which is great hands, great vision, just a very deceptive player with his hands. I think he's going to be great, and I think he's going to be fun to watch. So yeah, I think he's a player that's going to stay in the top 5, maybe 6, something like that, but definitely a player that's going to be at the top of the draft. And at number 5, the Montreal Canadiens passed on Matvei Michkov to get David Reinbacher, and this is where things gets a little bit more complicated. Some people say that Matvei Michkov told them that they wouldn't play in Montreal, but nobody has actually proof of that or whatever. So maybe somebody does. I don't know. I don't care. But anyways, I would have drafted Matvei Michkov, and I won't change my opinion on that because Matvei Michkov will be a star. David Reinbacher will not be a star. But David Reinbacher, if he can stay healthy at some point, I think he's going to be a good player. The season following his draft was not that great, but the whole team was terrible. They had like 10 coaches in the same year. And after that, he came to the AHL and he looked good in the playoff. And then after that, he followed that up the next year with a big injury where he didn't play the whole season basically and played like 20 something game, including the playoffs last year, where he did look good. Not special, not like a star or anything like that, but he did look good. And then in the training camp, where he did look good defensively, most time a little bit inconsistent here and there, but most of the time looked good. But pretty slow to process the game and get that first pass out of the zone. So I think he needs time. He needs to simmer in the AHL full year. No questions asked. Don't call him up. Just let him down there, play big minutes, and hope and pray that he becomes what they thought he was going to become. And at number 6, Arizona got Dmitri Simashev, which is a very good player in my opinion. He's a big guy, 6'5", skates like the wind, super deceptive with his skating too. He's not just fast, he's very deceptive, backward, forward, sideways. He's just really, really good. He's a defense first type of guy. He's not going to put a lot of points on the board. And even in the KHL, he put 6 points in 56 games last season. So I think it's obvious that he's not going to be a point producer, but he's a guy that can skate it out. He's a guy that has an accurate pass for a first pass. He's a guy that can retrieve pucks, deceive the forechecker, and then create some space to get that puck out. I think he's going to be an excellent defender, definitely a top 4 defender, even maybe a first pair defender if you pair him with a more dynamic player on his side. Just a player that I love. I always did, and I always will. And then we follow this up at number 7 with Matvei Michkov, the guy that obviously I wanted the Habs to take, that they did not. Like I said, some people are saying that maybe he said that he didn't want to play in Montreal, blah, 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 whatever. It doesn't really matter at this point. We didn't take him, so we're not having him. Uh, Smaller player, incredibly smart player, very competitive, offensively player, not very competitive defensively player, but he's young. He has plenty of time to get that in stride and just get better at defense, even though they didn't. Philadelphia definitely didn't draft him to play defense and kill penalties. That's not just the reason why you draft Matvei Michkov. You draft the hockey genius and the offensive genius because you want offense, and that's what he's bringing. In his first NHL game or NHL season, he put up 63 points, 26 goals in 80 games. So obviously a guy that is on his way to stardom in the NHL. And then we follow this up at number 9 by Washington with Ryan Leonard, a player that I really liked back in the days, that I still like today. I don't think he's going that offensive dynamo type of player that a lot of people think he's going to be, like a 60, 70 something point player. I don't think he's going to reach that. I think he's more like a 45 to 55 type of player, but a very physical player, a player that just gets under everybody's skin, a guy that's just annoying to play against, the type of player that you want in the playoff, a kind of Tom Wilson without the fighting and without the size 2.0, something like that. He's gonna score goals. He has a good shot. He's smart defensively. He skates well. He's very intense, very physical, very annoying. So he does a lot of things well. I think he's going to be a great player for the Washington Capitals. It might take a little bit of time for him to adjust to NHL speed and stuff like that. It's not like he's not a hockey genius or a super smart player like a Matvei Michkov, something like that. So it might be a little bit more complicated for him. But if he keeps playing his direct game, it's going to be good. And at number 9, we have Nate Danielson, taken by Detroit Red Wings, a 6'2", 6'3" center who plays very well in both sides of the puck. Not a guy that's a dynamic offensively, like at all. He had 39 points in 71 games in the AHL last season. He was never really good offensively or like dynamic offensively, but he was always good on both sides of the puck. And I think that's what he's going to be. I think he's going to be a third line center. I don't see a top 6 player. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Red Wings are right. I have no clue. But in my opinion, I think he's a bottom 6 or a third line or a middle 6, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. Yeah. So I think he's the candidate to go down in the draft when we redraft this draft in a couple of years from now. And then at number 10, the complete opposite, we have Dalibor Dvorsky, who was taken by St. Louis, a 6'1", 205-pound center who basically had a very beautiful curve of progression, good production, and basically when he was drafted, he was a more skilled player than Nate Danielson was. Like, good hands, good shot, good playmaking, good vision, basically good at everything except for the skating, who was a little bit average. In terms of production, he had 88 points in 52 games in the OHL, and then in the AHL, when he jumped there, 45 points, 21 goals in 61 games. So very good production, very good skills. I think he's going to be a guy that might stay in the top 10, maybe get kicked out a little bit of it, but I think he won't be too far from the top 10 when we redraft this thing in like 3, 4, 5 years. And at number 11, by the Vancouver Canucks, we have Tom Willander, a 6'1", 190 pounds right shot defenseman who did pretty well in the NCAA. I wouldn't say he was dynamic or anything like that, and I don't think that's ever going to be his game, where he's going to be like the guy at the blue line moving east-west, trying to open lanes and make shot. That's not going to be him. But still, 25 points and 24 points in 38 and 39 games respectively. Pretty good production in the NCAA for a defenseman, but his game is going to be using his body and using his speed. He's a very, very good skater. He's also physical. I think he can defend well, get that puck, retrieve it, escape the forecheck, and get a good first pass or skate it out himself. That's basically what his game is going to be. It's not going to be the showman guy at the blue line or anything like that. And then at number 12, by the Arizona Coyotes back at the time, who are the Utah Mammoth now, they got Daniel Booth, a giant 6'6", 216-pound left winger who put up decent production, not crazy production, but still 21 points in 55 games in the KHL the year before, and then 28 in 54 last year. So good production, just nothing that impressive. But now he's signed to the NHL, is going to the AHL with his friend Dmitri Simashev, both in the same team. all the time. So I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's probably more a middle six player than a top six player, even though he does have skills. He has a good shot. He plays a little bit of a power forward game sometimes. Not the best skater out there, not the best defensive player either, not necessarily the most physical player either, even if he's a 6'6" player. So we'll see how it goes for him in North America. I think he's gonna have to develop that game a little bit. So I kind of see him fall a little bit. I don't think he's like a top 16 type of player right now. We'll see how it goes. But for now, a little bit outside of the top 16 in my opinion. And then we have Zach Benson at number 13, a pick that I really like because Zach Benson is a player that I had in my top 10. I think I had him sixth overall or something like that. So I was really high on him. 5'9", 5'10", so not a big player and doesn't have great feet either. So he's very agile, but he's not necessarily fast. So it might be a little bit of a problem. Not the most explosive either, but a very, very smart player and a very skilled player, but also probably the most competitive player of all the players in this draft, including Ryan Leonard. Yes, he's smaller, so he doesn't have the same impact, but he's very, very competitive. You will never see that guy like not back check or not finish his check if he needs to, or do everything to retrieve that puck, or all the good stuff that competitive player do. In terms of production, well, the Buffalo Sabres did a Buffalo Sabre thing and they just left him in the NHL when he was clearly not ready to play in the NHL. 30 points in 71 games, then 28 in 75. Basically no like progression in that production. I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to figure it out. Maybe maybe Buffalo Sabres will trade him. Like in a couple of years from now, he's going to be good in the next team. And then at number 14, we have Braden Yeager, who was drafted by Pittsburgh, but then traded to Winnipeg in exchange for Rodger McGroarty. I really like Braden Yeager, or at least I really liked him. I'm not exactly sure what he's going to be at the NHL level. I'm not exactly sure. He's not the biggest guy. He's like a 6 foot player. His biggest strength is his shot. He's also pretty good defensively. So I just don't know if he has that top six potential. That's my question with him. I think he has middle six potential, a third line guy that can play on the top six without hurting your team. But I'm not sure if he can actually be a top six player day in, day out all the time. But in terms of production, following his draft year, he had 95 points, 35 goals in 57 games, which is pretty good. And then he had 82 in 54. Jesus. All right. So still good production. Not like impressive or anything like that for a draft plus two. But I'm excited to see what he does in the AHL against men, against physical players. Just want to see what he does there to have a better idea what he's going to be at the NHL level. And then at number 15 for Nashville, we have Matthew Wood, a 6'4", 205 left winger. They say center, but I don't remember at least I don't remember seeing him play center, so I don't know. In terms of production, in his draft plus one, 21 points in 35 games. Not necessarily the best program out there, and not necessarily the best production, too. Then he changed to Minnesota and went with 39 and 39, which is pretty good. Also, I saw him a couple of games in the training camp just recently, and I think he looked pretty good, honestly. Yeah, I think he needs to take a step with his feet. It's always been the case. He was always a couple of steps behind the NHL, and I think like he's reaching like close to NHL level in terms of skating, but he needs to take a little extra step to be able to do what he does in the NHL. Jump into space, release that shot, score goals. And then at 16, we have Samuel Onzek, a player that I really liked in his draft year. I think I had him in the first half of the first round, if I'm not mistaken. A left wing, 6'4", 194 pounds. Played a certain type of physical, but now he's not as physical as he used to be, but also has good hands, good vision, a good shot. I like his placement. I like how he finds soft ice on the ice, jumps into it, release a hard shot. The production is not that great. 21 points in 52 games in the AHL is really not all that impressive. And the year before that, in his draft plus one, he had 31s and 33. So meh, not that great. But I think he's a decent player. I think he's probably more of a third line player than a top six player. So maybe he's a candidate to go down in this list in a couple years from now. But nonetheless, he's going to be a 6'4", hard to play against player who can also put complementary offense in the NHL. And at number 17, by Detroit, we have Axel Sandin Pelika, the savior of Detroit. A lot of or some fans think that he's like basically the best defenseman in the entire draft of that year. I'm not there yet. I think he's going to compete for being like the number three, number two, or number one defenseman in the draft, but I don't think he's there yet. I think the defense is just okay. The skating backward is just okay. So unless he wants to defend like Lane Hudson does, which is mean like skate forward the whole time, then I don't know. I don't know. I'm not convinced. Also, I don't think he's a dynamic offensive player. I think he's a dynamic shooter. I think he's a guy that can find space and release a hard shot, but I don't think he's a dynamic distributor. So yes, he's going to play on the power play in the NHL, that I'm pretty sure of. But what is going to be his role? Is he going to be more like around the circle and release his one timer, or is he going to be at the top of it and be the distributor? So it depends how much his game evolves. For now, I like him. I don't think he's the savior. And then at number 18, Winnipeg went with Colby Barlow, a player that I liked at the time, that I still like. I just feel like there is just no progression or evolution in his game whatsoever in the last 3 years. Basically, the production stayed the same. And in his draft year, he had the best production of all. And then following his draft year, he had 58 and 50, and then 61 in 62. So, like, the production did not evolve whatsoever. In his game, too. Basically, he's not a great skater, so I think that's going to be a problem at the NHL level. He did maybe take a step, but it's a tiny step, not a big one. His shot is good. His drag shot is good. His one timer is shot. His one timer is good. He goes around the net. He has good hands around the net. He's physical. He can do a lot of stuff. It's just I'm not sure if he can do them at NHL speed yet. So it's gonna take a little while. He's gonna go in the AHL and he's going to work on his speed and basically try to become an NHL player. But if he does become an NHL player, he can be a middle six shooter, complementary offense type of guy that can play physical, retrieve pucks as the F1 if he can actually take a step in his skating. But nonetheless, a good player. I'm just not sure if he can actually get there. And then at 19, Chicago did whatever they do. They draft for speed all the time, and they went with Oliver Moore, probably the best skater in the entire draft. A 5'11" center slash winger, 194 pounds. He makes me think a little bit of Alex Newhook, not the smartest player out there, not the best distributor out there, but a guy that can shoot the puck, a guy that can skate like exceptionally well, that can transition the puck, that try to use his speed to create advantages on every shift, basically. That's what Alex Newhook does, and that's what Oliver Moore does. It makes me think of that type of player. I think maybe Oliver Moore has a little bit more offense in him. Maybe. We'll see how it goes. Alex Newhook had very, very good NCAA stats. I think even better than Oliver Moore. So we'll see how it goes. Not my favorite player. I think he will be good. I just don't think he's going to be a top 6 player. And then at number 20, we have Edward Schale, a player that I just don't know what to say anymore. I just don't like what he is. Like, he's a 6'1", 175 pounds winger, and I don't know what he does. Like, the guy can skate well enough, but doesn't play with pace. He has a good shot, but he doesn't take that many shots. He's a good passer, but I don't know. He doesn't create anything with pace. He's not a hard worker. He's not physical. He doesn't go in the corners. Doesn't battle along the board. I don't know, and I'm just not convinced by him. I don't know if he reaches the NHL. Honestly, but that's my opinion. Or maybe he's going to be given many chances to make the NHL, but I think he doesn't have it in him to fight to stay in the NHL. If that makes sense, that's the way I see it. I don't know. Maybe this year he proves me wrong, and he become better than what he was. But I just don't like what he's been doing at all. So we'll see. And at number 21, the Minnesota Wild, they took Charlie Stramel, a center, 6'3", 216 pounds, so big frame, big guy. The year after his draft was rough with 8 points in 34 games for University of Wisconsin, and then he switched to Michigan State, where he went with 27 points, 9 goals in 37 games. So good progression, and it's good to see because before his draft year, like his draft year, I thought he was very like underwhelming. But before his draft year, I thought he was going to be like a top 10 player. So it turns out he was not a top 10 player, but he was chosen 21st. And then it was rough, but then it's getting better. And I think he's going to be an NHL player, like a third line center that can play defensively, physically, can score goals, not ton of goals, but he's going to do his thing. I think he's going to be a good player. And I think the 20s, end of 20s maybe is more spot when we redraft this thing in a couple of years. And then on 22, another savior, but this time for Philadelphia, it's Oliver Bonk, a 6'2", almost 200-pound right shot winger. No, it was defenseman. Uh, he did very well, especially in his draft plus 1 year where he had 67 points in 60 games, 24 goals, including like 20 of them that were from the bumper position, which will never translate to the NHL, right? Because there is just no defenseman in the bumper position in the NHL. He can also score from the circle with a one timer. It's not, doesn't score a lot from there, but he can do it. Even last year, if you look at his 11 goals, I checked them all. I don't remember exactly what the number are, but there's many of them that is like in the bumper. So it's just not translatable, but I think he's going to be a good defenseman that can move his feet, that can move the puck forward, that's going to put some offense. I don't think he's a 40-point type of guy. I don't think he's a savior or anything like that. I think he's just going to be a good defenseman on both sides of the puck that can defend well, retrieve the puck, and move that puck forward. That's it. That's what he is. I think that's what he was drafted for, and I think he's going to be very good at it. And then at number 23, the Rangers took Gabe Perreault, which I thought was a great pick at the time. I still think it's a great pick. I think he's a very smart player, very skilled player, very intense player, but I think he needs to become stronger and just, more thick, more NHL ready type of player. Right now, he's very frail, very easy to push off the puck, and it was like that in the NCAA, so it's going to be like that in the NHL too. But he's a smart player, a skilled player, an intense player, so he will put up points in the NHL. Is he going to play this year? Or is he going to play in the AHL? I think the AHL is probably the better route for him to get to adjust to the pace because the skating was not an issue, but it's also not a strength. And a guy of that size, that's easy to push off the puck. You kind of need some explosion in your legs to at least create some separation between you and players, so they can't push you off the puck, right? So, yeah, I think there's a little bit of time before he becomes the player that he can become, but I think I can definitely see a guy that's a 50, even maybe 60-point type of player. He's a very good connector, very good playmaker, and I think he can score goals too. And then at 24, Nashville took Tanner Molendijk, which was probably the best skating defenseman. I don't think he's as good as Oliver Moore, who's a forward, but I think he's not that far behind. Very good skater, east west, north south, whatever the cardinal point you want to talk about. I think he can skate them all. He's not a big guy though. He's 6 foot, 181 pounds, so not a big guy at all. In terms of production, it's been pretty stable. Basically, a point per game guy in the WHL in the last 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I think it's time for him to make that jump. I think there's nothing left for him to learn at the WHL level. And now he needs to defend against AHL pace, which he will do because of his feet. But now he needs also to defend against AHL physicality, which might be a little bit more complicated. But in the end, I think he will be a top four defenseman in the NHL. It just might take a little while. And then at number 25, St. Louis went with Otto Stenberg, the brother of Ivar Stenberg, a guy that's going to be picked like number 2 or number 3 this season. Just an incredible player. His brother is not at all the same level as Ivar Stenberg. I think he's competitive. I think he does have some offensive skill, but I think it's not enough for him to play in the top 6 in the NHL. And he doesn't bring all that much else than that. Like, yes, he can play a little bit of defense. Yes, he's capable of battling for pucks along the board, but it's not a strength. So I wonder what's his role. Even if we look at the stats, he had 6 points in 25 games in the SHL and then 17 and 38 in the AHL. So not necessarily bad production for a guy that just transferred to North America. Just nothing special. Doesn't look like a top 6 type of guy, but also doesn't really look like a guy that has a role for a bottom 6. So we'll see how it goes. They're gonna teach him, they're gonna carve him a spot, and they're gonna try to make him a player. And then at number 26, we have the famous Quentin Musty, a 6'2", 200-pound left winger, a guy that had very, very good production, 102 points following his draft year, and then followed that up with 59 points, but in only 33 games. The thing with Quentin Musty that did not change, and that I just recorded this thing but in French, so now I'm going to say the same thing but in English, is that some nights he's a power forward and some nights he's a ballerina. So you need to, not you, but he needs to like hone in his game and be that power forward every single night. Like the NHL, you need consistency. If you want to be a good player, you want to be paid, and you want to be an offensive player, you got to be consistent night after night. And he can be that because when he is that power forward, he can cut to the net, he can play physically, he can skate. He's good when he actually moves his feet. And when he doesn't move his feet and he's that ballerina trying to attack everybody one on one and make like spectacular plays from the outside, like it'll work in the OHL, but it won't work in the NHL. So it's going to be very limiting for him. But if he can be that player and be consistent, I think he's going to be a very good player because he has skills and he has power elements in his game. And then at 27, we have Callum Ritchie, who was originally taken by Colorado, but then traded to New York Islanders for, I don't remember who, but that center guy. What's his name? I don't know. Anyway, Callum Ritchie is a 6'2", 190 pounds center, sometimes winger. I think he's a good playmaker. He doesn't have like he did score 28 goals in the AHL following his draft year, but I don't think his shot is really all that impressive. I think he's more of a playmaker. He's also not consistent in the way that he plays with physicality. Like, yes, he's big and yes, he can skate and yes, you can notice him, but you don't notice him every single night. So same thing, a lot of young players, that's the issue that they have. I remember in his draft year, Kirby Dak was like that. Some nights he was completely dominant, and the other nights he was like basically invisible. So it's basically I see the same thing with Callum Ritchie. It's like sometimes he's completely dominant and some nights he's completely invisible. So he's got to choose which one he wants to be and try to be that player consistently. And if he does become the player that you actually notice, he's going to be a good player for the Islanders. And if he's somewhere in the middle, he's going to be just okay. I think he's a player that has potential to move up that list, but I think there's work to do for him to get there. And then at number 28, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they drafted Easton Cowan, a 6', 190 pounds center slash winger. We'll see. I think it was a good draft pick, but I don't think he's going to be the player that a lot of people expect him to be. Like the 96.34 goals in 54 games for the London Knights type of player. I don't think that's who he is at all. He does have skills and he does have intensity and he does have skating. He has a lot going for him, but like he's not going to be a 70-point type of player in the NHL. I think he's like maybe a 45 to 55 type of player that can play, that can kill penalties, that can play on both sides of the puck, that can be intense. Like he's a good player. He's just not an offensive juggernaut, which like his stats would suggest he is. At least that's my opinion. I might be very wrong on that. We'll see in a couple years. But yeah, I think the progression went as well as it could be for them. I'm sure Toronto are very happy with their draft pick. I would be, and I think he's a player that's going to move up that list. I just don't think that he's like an offensive juggernaut, like I was saying. And then at 29, St. Louis decided to draft the entire Swedish team, and they went with Theo Lindstein, a player that I think like you know what you are getting by drafting Theo Lindstein. You're getting a player that's going to defend, that's going to skate, and that's going to retrieve the puck, create separation with a forechecker or mess with him, and create a nice first pass. I don't think he's a guy that's going to move east-west on the blue line or the offensive blue line and create lanes for shooting and passing and just be that deceptive offensive guy in the offensive zone. That's not his game, even though he's a mobile player. I just think that he's going to defend, create separation, nice first pass, move the puck forward, basically. I think that's his game. I think he can do it at top four level. It's just his game is more reminiscent of a third pair type of player, but maybe he's a number four guy or something like that. And then at number 30, Carolina did what Carolina does, and they drafted Bradley Nadeau, a guy that exploded offensively. He wasn't the biggest guy in his draft year, but he was definitely one of the top shooter. If you take just the shot itself, where he played, obviously he played in was it the BCHL? I think it's BCHL where he played. Like he was already a dynamic shooter and a good skater. It's just he was on the smaller side and he still is. But when you look at the progression, the guy had 46 points in 37 games for the University of Maine in the NCAA. And then he went to the AHL after only 1 year after his draft. And then he put up 58 points, 32 goals in 64 games for the Chicago Wolves in the American League. That's just amazing progression. I think he's going to be a good NHL player. I think he's going to score a lot of goals. I think he's going to play on the power play. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be very good, like physically or defensively or anything like that. But I don't think they drafted him for that because it was obvious that that was not going to be the player he was going to be. But he's a fantastic shooter. and he's never going to lose that. And he's going to score a lot of goals for Carolina. So good for them. And then with the 31st pick, Colorado drafted Mikhail Guyayev, a player that I really liked. Like, not really liked. I think I had him like 30th or something like that. So I liked him, not really, really. But he's a very, very good skater, very mobile, very agile, very explosive. Like one of the best skater in the draft in terms of defenseman. Not as much as Molendijk, but not too far behind him. Not the bigger guy either, a bit like Molendijk. But he was more of an offensive type of defenseman, but it didn't really translate up because when you look at it, when you look at his production after his draft year, he got 12 points in 64 games in the KHL. So obviously, you're like, okay, he didn't play that much. Obviously, first jump in the pro league could be hard. Cool. All right. The year after, 15 points in 67 games. So you're like, okay, well, it's basically the same production. And then the year after, which is now, he has 2 points in 11 games. So turns out the offense is not really translating at the pro level for now. So maybe he's going to have to find a different way, and he's not like the best defender out there. That his game was always about dynamic offense and dynamic feet. If he can't do that, then what is his role? That's a question that I have. I think he's a candidate to move down in this list, like down in the second round, maybe even third round if it doesn't go well. Because if he can't defend at a high level and he can't produce offense at a high level, the 5'11" player, where is he gonna play? What is he gonna do in the NHL? I don't know. So we'll see. And then the last in the first round, drafted by Vegas at the time, but then traded to Nashville, is David Edstrom, a 6'3" center. A good player, had decent production in the SHL last season with 19 points in 39 games, which is perfectly fine. I don't think he has the skills to be a top six player. I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't think that's what he was drafted for anyway. I think he's going to be an anchor on the third line, the type of guy that can take important face-off, a guy that can play against the other team's best line, just a guy that can lock it down defensively, not get scored against, but also might not score against the other team either. So basically, you need players like that. I think he's going to be good at it. It's just not an impressive player. So if he's actually a good penalty killer, third line center, he's going to move up in this list. If he's not that, then he's going to move down. But nonetheless, it was the last pick of the draft, and I think he was a good pick there. Just nothing special. And then obviously there are players in the second round and third round, all the way up to the seventh round, players that are looking good that might jump into the first round at some point, players that I liked back in the time, or players that I didn't have too much time for that are still showing up and being good, or even players that I never seen that are actually being pretty good. So there's obviously my guy, Andrew Crystal. This guy was a player that I always like. I've been talking about him for years. I've been hyping him up for years, and I will keep doing it until he makes it or doesn't make it. But nonetheless, the guy had 60 and 72 points in two teams last year in 28 games and 29 games. So just the guy is just crazy productive. 41 points in 19 games in the playoff too. The problem with Crystal is that he's not a physical player and that he's not a fast player. He can play fast, he can think fast, he can do everything fast, he can make decisions fast, but he can't skate fast. So and he's also like a Demidov skater or a Hudson skater, like a guy that's on 10-2 all the time trying to face the play. So, like, he's a weird player. I understand it. I think he's just too smart and too good to not be a productive player at the NHL level. He might be absolutely nothing, but he might be also a very productive player. Then obviously there are players also like Trey Augustine, drafted by Detroit, who did really, really well in the NCAA. I think he's going back for another year. I think so. Like, if you compare with Fowler, which I think are the two best goalie taken from that draft, Fowler is signed to the AHL, and I think Trey Augustine is going back to the NCAA for another year. But like those two goalies are going to fight for who's going to be the best goalie out of that draft at some point. Then there's also Roman Kantsarov, a 5'9" player in the KHL who's just a point per game right now, was a point per game last year or almost. Just a dynamic player. Obviously, he's 5'9", so we'll have to see how it translates to the NHL level because you never know. When players are small, even though they're dynamic, sometimes it doesn't work, but it might just work for Roman Kantsarov because he's that dynamic. Also, players like Danny Nelson and Carson Rekhoff, two players that did really well. Also, they could move up that list. I don't think they are impressive player, but I think they are players that could definitely move up this list. Lenny Haminaho too is a player that I think is really good, very good production right now. I think he's one of those players that might jump to the first round in the end. And then there's Nick Lardis. The guy just scored like 70 plus goals in the OHL. I think there's a big chance that this guy can score at least 20 or 25 in the NHL. I'm not convinced he's that player yet because you got to respect the goal scoring ability that he has because he scored so much. But at the same time, a lot of his goals are not NHL levels goals. So it's a bit weird. I'm excited to see what he's going to do because I have no clue if he's actually going to be a top six player in the NHL or in Nothing Burger. So I don't know. Then there's also Jacob Fowler, like I said, who was taken in the third round, who could be like the best goalie taken in the entire draft. Just a machine. He was a wall in the USHL. He was a wall in the NCAA. He did really well last year in the AHL when he came in. Did really well in training camp now, mostly. So I think it's just looking good. I would let him simmer for a while, and basically, I think we got a starter for the future. And then there's also Yegor Zavragin, another goalie that might actually fight for the first spot in the draft for the goalies. A guy that was playing in Sochi at the beginning of last season and was the first goalie there, basically competing with another Habs goalie, Yevgeny Volokin. But then he went back to SKA and he was just like the best goalie in the KHL. So I think this guy is going to be really, really good. He's a very good goalie. I think he's going to move up that list. There's just no questions about it. The guy's drafted in the third round is could be the best goalie of the entire draft. And then there's also Emil Pieniniemi, a complicated name, 6'2", the left shot defenseman who was playing in Finland and then transferred up to Canada in the OHL and did really well. The guy had a point per game season, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 60, 10 goals in 60 games in the OHL for the Kingston Frontenacs. The guy can defend well, can move the puck well. He's an agile skater. I think he has a lot going for him. It's going to be really good. I think a player drafted 91st overall is probably going to move like could be all the way up to the first round, honestly. And then there's many others like Florian Jackai and Luca Quignoni who could also move up, maybe not all the way to the first round. Like Florian Jackai had 24 goals in his first AHL season last year, which is fantastic for. I mean, for a guy that was known for being like the fighter or the physical guy, and then he can also score a ton of goals. So there, yeah, cool. Why not? And then there's Luca Cagnoni, who's a small defenseman, put up a ton of points, was really good in the American League, made a little stint in the NHL, and basically, I think if I'm not mistaken, he was actually the first defenseman of this entire draft to go play in the NHL, and that's a fourth rounder, so that's pretty crazy in my opinion. But yeah, I think that's about it. I don't have any other player to talk about. So, like I said, I wanted to keep it short. So, even if there's some other, we're not going to talk about them. That's it. That's all. That's it for today. Please take the time to like, please take the time to subscribe, and please hype the video if you are on mobile. It helps me like being projected to more people who want to hear me talk about hockey. On that, thank you for watching. See you on the next one. Peace.